Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I really hope you can hear me right now because I don't see myself. My name is Zahid and I'm one of the co-organizers at MuslamicMakers. For those of you who have been to one of our events before, welcome back. We really appreciate you being here. And for anyone who is attending our event for the first time, or if you're not familiar with MuslamicMakers, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire team, a very, very warm welcome to our family. MuslamicMakers is a community of Muslim change makers who upskill and pioneer the world of tech. MuslamicMakers provides a safe space which is fueled by growth mindsets, and the aim of our work is to facilitate collaboration by connecting change makers who will go on to drive innovation and inspire others to do their best work as well. We're almost at capacity, so we can just kick off the event now. And today's event is in collaboration with the wonderful people at Dean Developers. Massive shout out to Ibrahim and Alamin for their work behind the scenes to get this event up and running. It's also in collaboration with Bubble, which is a no-code platform, and you'll learn more about them shortly. We have our no-code expert in residence, Zubair, hosting today's event, as well as some really inspiring members from the community who will be showcasing their work. I can't wait for you all to see how other people are using no-code already to power their projects. I really hope you find today's event useful and insightful. Please do get involved by networking and connecting with everyone else attending today's event. And you can do this by joining our private Slack channel. Someone from the team will post details on how you can get involved. Otherwise, you can always head over to MuslamicMakers.com and click the link, join our Slack to find out more. With that, I'd like to hand over to Ibrahim, who'll give an introduction to Dean Developers, and then Zubair will kick things off. Hope you enjoy the evening, and over to you, Ibrahim.
Yep, assalamu alaikum. I've just got some short slides to kind of go through to introduce Dean Developers just a little bit. First of all, Jazakallah khair for attending this event, and Jazakallah khair to Zubair for putting this event together. Alhamdulillah, seems like a really, really great panel, and inshallah you guys are inspired and learn a lot more about low code, no code. So just a little bit about Dean Developers. We're a community that crowdsources talent to solve societal problems. We're made up of a bunch of different people, techies, creatives, product people, developers, and so forth, from some of the biggest tech firms out there, as well as startups and so on. We've worked with a number of different great organizations, like our friends here at MuslamicMakers in the past, and featured in a few different news organizations as well. What's probably more important is what are some of our goals and objectives? Well, firstly, it's to empower and unlock potential. Now, this sounds a little bit cliche, but essentially what it is that we want to show working professionals that with the skills that they've already gained at work, those developer skills, design skills, and product skills, that if they're channeled in the right way, they can make a difference. And in order to make a difference in the world, it doesn't take much effort and it doesn't take much time. Secondly, our community is rife with problems, not only just the Muslim community, but UK society at large. And we at Dean Developers, we want to be at the forefront of actively solving community problems by leveraging tech. And third and finally, we want to create that space for innovation, a place where like-minded people can come together, people who really want to make a difference in the world can come together, share ideas, and build something in a collaborative manner for society at large. And what's probably more equally important is how do we actually do this? Well, the first way that we do this is by crowdsourcing community talent. So we are Dean Developers. We love running hackathons. We've run a few hackathons in the past, including with MuslamicMakers last year. And what we do is that we bring together the brightest talents out there, developers, designers, product people, and we build solutions, MVPs around an overarching theme. And some of the products that we've built with the help of our community have been SolarSpace, which is basically a QR booking system that allowed for people to book prayer spaces at their local mosque. And from something that only took 2 weeks to build with a budget of £1.50 on a monthly basis, 86,000 people benefited from the platform and have been using the platform. We got a cheeky shout out from Sadiq Khan, which was nice also. One of the other products that we built was Share Iftar, which was last Ramadan. The problem we was trying to solve was how do the financially vulnerable people within society, with mosques being closed, how do they get iftar meals from the local mosque? So alhamdulillah, again, at one of our hackathons, within the space of 5 days, on a very, very tight budget, a team from within the Deen developers community came together and built a platform that allowed for people to order free meals from local mosques. And from a mosque perspective, telling mosques how many meals they had to prepare exactly on a daily basis so that they don't over prepare or under prepare. And again, from something that within a very short amount of time, close to 1,400 meals were ordered through the platform. Once again, Chef Dar went on to turn into Food Pot, which is a digital food bank that allows for people to order free meals from food banks and mosques and stuff like that. And again, the Deen developers community came together to build something in a really collaborative manner. Alhamdulillah, we wanted to build an experience that allowed for people to order meals without feeling like they're ordering meals. And the reason why I'm giving these examples is because, again, we are Deen developers. We want to show people that in order to make a difference in the world, it doesn't take much time, it doesn't take much effort. And with the skills that you already possess, you can make a difference. As well as solving problems and building technical solutions. We are a community at heart. We do run different community events like this event here with MuslamicMakers. And also host a number of different community initiatives like Code Jam and so forth. So what do we have planned going forward? We've got a few different stuff coming up, inshallah, which is trying to keep a few things under wraps, inshallah. But in the very immediate future, we teamed up with Venture Studios from Crisis, a leading homeless charity in the UK, to run a hackathon around solving issues around homelessness. Homelessness is something that affects tens of thousands of people within the UK, and it doesn't discriminate when it comes to age, gender, race, or religion. And we at Deen Developers, we want to bring the community together to make a significant impact for the homeless in this sense. So if you do want to sign up, inshallah, we are looking for UX designers, developers, product people, and so on. And if you do want to kind of help us join us in our journey to do something of benefit for the homeless, do sign up at deendevelopers.com/hackathon. If you do want to get involved with Deen Developers in general, sign up to our Slack at deendevelopers.com. And I'll leave you with this quote, which hopefully, inshallah, serves as a bit of a motivation and inspiration to get involved with our hackathon. One of the brothers made a really good point. He said that donating your skills is probably just as important as donating money, because when real change is made is when we as people, we give up just a little bit of our time and we build stuff for the community essentially. So hopefully, inshallah, I look forward to seeing you guys again, inshallah, hopefully attending our hackathon and so forth. That's a short introduction to Deen Developers, and I'll pass it back to Zahid. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah, Ibrahim. Thank you for the intro. Zubair, the stage is all yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Let me just share my screen and be careful that it is the right screen. So what do you guys see? Introduction to no code?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So everybody's introduced the event, so no need to talk about it. A brief outline. I'll start with an intro, and then David Pal is going to join us, and from LA, he's going to talk about his journey in no code. Maysalinka said, I think I may be forgetting, she's in New York somewhere, and she's going to be talking about how she built a newsletter directory in a few hours. And Munir is joining us somewhere in the UK. He's going to be talking about how National Zakat Foundation acts like a startup and uses no code and does some amazing things. So brief background, I'm a software engineer turned no coder, not really a full stack web developer. Don't tell any of my clients that. Run a team of 7 guys building apps for clients around the world. And we specialize in Bubble specifically, not just the whole no code ecosystem. This talk is about no code, but you may see a strong theme of Bubble.io as one of the leading platforms in it. And over time, hopefully it'll get clearer as to why. So lots of makers, entrepreneurs, developers, it starts like, okay, I have a great idea and now I need to go build it or learn how to build it or find someone to build it. So if we take one of the common paths about learning how to build it, or just going to a coding boot camp, this is what the journey looks like. Hold my tea and go 3 months full time and all these wonderful acronyms and technologies. And by that time, perhaps your idea may have been just waiting and turned into a skeleton. Now, There are alternate pathways, of course. Lots of people are familiar. No code is not something new. Some of us may actually remember this. I'm a bit old now, I've started to realize. 97. Now, then WordPress came along and pretty much revolutionized a lot of the web. There is a reason, I think it powers more than 50% of the web. I may be wrong, don't quote me on that, but it's really a big giant in all the websites out there, e-commerce, lots of different things. And more recently, other players like Wix, Squarespace, they just came along. It's like, okay, make stuff even better, even faster, even cleaner looking. And what's next? This is what we're going to be talking about. Okay, what's next? Now, let's take a step back and think about what is a web application. Ignore the JavaScript, HTML, CSS, those types of things. Let's talk about it. Okay, I want some data. I want it to look a certain way. I want to design that. And I have some logic. This is how it all works together. Whatever I do. So even this Google Sheets you guys are looking, I'm clicking here and some data is being fetched from Google servers. There's some logic, and then I see something on the web browser. So the no-code journey looks a bit different. So you can hold your tea, depending on what you're doing and what platform you're doing, hours, days, weeks, and you can just start fundamentally, because the technical barrier is going away. If this pie chart, design, data, logic, was still hidden behind all this. It's not like we didn't need design, data, logic. We still needed design, data, logic. We just had a large layer of other technologies, software programming, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, lots of that. So keeping that concept in mind, design, data, and logic, what I actually wanted to do was to make a live demo, but I'm a bit shy, so I cheated. So I've prepared one already. So this is what you see in the Bubble editor. Bubble as a platform, why I like it is because it combines all three. Design, data, logic, you can do all three in Bubble. There are platforms that do some or one as a specialist platform, but Bubble combines all three. And let me show you what it looks like. So if I go to bubble.io, sign up, create an app, I'll appear somewhere in this editor. Okay, so the first tab is the design tab, and I can just drag and drop various things, input elements, uh, drop down, search box. Most people are familiar with drag and drop design tools. And at first glance, it may look like this is it. It's just simple. It's like Figma or whatever, but it's not really. All three components, design, data, logic. So if I want to go create a database, I'll just go to the data tab. I have my own custom data type, waitlist. I can add a custom field to it. Let's do a brief exercise here. Let's add a last name. Okay, last name, last name, last name, and first name. Okay, so I just changed my design a bit. I'll switch to the data tab. I need another field in my waitlist. I'm gonna add last name here. It's gonna be of a type text. So my database has changed a bit. And now back to logic. So logic is in the workflow tab. So on this button, start and edit workflow, I've already placed a few actions, but I've added another field here. So what's the first action here? Create a new waitlist entry in the database. Okay, so I need to add the last name here, input last name's value, and that's it. So I added a bit of design, I added a bit of logic, I added a bit of data, and these two are just like I added a send email. Okay, hi, thank you for registering. We'll be in touch. So this is a very basic register your interest waiting list type sign up form. Now, the key part here, let's click the preview button. This is live. So you can basically just go If I paste this in the chat, where did the chat go? I'm struggling to see the chat. Can somebody paste this link in the chat? It's amazingapp99.bubbleapps.io/version-test. Okay, you guys can just go use it. Just add your details, register your interest. You'll see a thank you alert, and in the database, here's the data. It's all my waitlist entries are just coming through here. These are 2 test instances I added, but my name is here, my last name is here. Now, so keep that theme in mind. Design data logic. I didn't need to learn, but a little secret about myself. I don't really like JavaScript, to be honest, or HTML or CSS. So this might feel strange that, okay, why am I making web apps here? That's because no code, fundamentally. Bubble as a platform also gives us like various things, domain, general, different upgrade plans, all sorts of things. I can keep talking about Bubble all day long. There's a huge ecosystem here. And one of the terms I'll use to describe Bubble is it's the WordPress for web apps. So similar to how WordPress came along and moved things aside, Bubble is doing that and just moving. A lot of apps are being built in it. Now, okay, what if my app is more like design logic heavy or design data heavy? Not really, doesn't really fit Bubbles. So there's a whole ecosystem out here. If you It's like Webflow. Adalo is good for mobile apps. Which one do I pick? Airtable, something for data heavy. Zapier to connect things. Lot big giants like Amazon and Google are making things platforms as well. I think Amazon ones is called Honeycomb, something like that. There's basically a whole ecosystem. Glide is great for throwing quick demo types, mobile apps, spreadsheet powered apps. There's basically a whole ecosystem out here. And it turns into a no code stack overall that, okay, my app doesn't really need to be powered by HTML. Well, it is underneath the hood. It's still powered by the same HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all these technologies and all these programming languages. But with no code, you're just working at a higher level. So a concept in software engineering and programming. Okay, we have different levels of languages. So at the very low level, assembly language. A bit above that, C, C++. A bit above that, Python and higher level languages. Okay, now take it even a step further. We're talking about platform as a service, no code platforms, and you can just host your entire application on top of these platforms. Bubble's here in the middle that combines design, data, and logic. There are a few others like Thunkable and a few Betty blocks are also combining design, data, logic, but most platforms will combine 2 of them. All right. So if you're convinced by now, where do you go from here? A couple of links, makerpad.co, nocodefounders.com, a very active Slack community. MakerPad, I think, was recently acquired by Zapier for I don't know how much. Bubble specific resources, of course, bubble.io, their forum, boot camps. So coding boot camps would take 3 months full time. Bubble.io boot camp. I've taught a boot camp. I'm an instructor. David's next, he's an instructor. These boot camps are like 8 weeks, and the first session's 3 hours and 2 hours each week. And at the end of a session, I've seen people. What was my first cohort? So there was an accountant. There was a French student from somewhere. I think she was studying arts. There was another person in France, and there was, I'm struggling to remember, a guy ran a podcast audio editing thing. They were definitely not developers. And at the end, they could just start making their ideas. I'm not saying they were able to go to production all the way after 8 weeks. They had busy lives, but they could realize their ideas. But yeah, there's lots of self-taught courses and tutorials out there, and you can pick it up very quickly as well. So that's it from my side. Question and answer I'd like to take at the end. Now, David Pyle is our next speaker. I'm going to read his bio. all bios are really impressive. So David is joining us all the way from Los Angeles. He is a PhD in civil and environmental engineering from Princeton University. He is a serial entrepreneur, Bubble.io bootcamp instructor, coach, Bubble.io coach, co-founder of a SaaS at the moment, and I'm sure I missed many more details. So over to David for his journey with no code and how it has never been simpler to start a business or build a product or iterate in the age of no code. So
awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. You got that pretty right about who I am. Yeah, you can go ahead to that next slide here. So just a little bit about me. I am a builder. I like tinkering. I'm really curious about just learning how to do things. But for me, the journey of learning is just as important as the outcome at the end. And like Zubair said, I was getting a PhD at Princeton in environmental and civil engineering. And at the end of my fellowship, my advisor basically told me that I could do whatever I wanted as long as I didn't get into trouble. Right. So I said, hey, let's start a business. How hard is that? And I guess before I get too far into this, the talk I'm going to give today is really more the squishy, fuzzy stuff of no code, the power behind it, and how it really helps you accomplish what you're going for and what you want to do. So my advisor tells me to do whatever I want, and so I had this idea, and the reason why my business is called Ads on Top is because we initially set out to put ads on Ubers and Lyfts. And so we were taking what taxi top advertising had done and moving it over into the rideshare space, thinking, hey, taxis are dying. This is in 2016. Uber and Lyft, they were growing rapidly. And we thought, hey, let's build this business. And so 5 years ago, with all these resources from the university, I had set out on building the traditional way of building a software company. Recruit a dozen software engineers, raise some family and friends outside funding, some VC funding, and start building a product and testing a product. And while it took this team of 8 people a few months to actually build this thing, had they not been interns, this would have been a very expensive endeavor, hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this software platform that we didn't really know how it needed to work. And so we built this thing. I moved from New Jersey out to Los Angeles to sell these ads, to try launch this network of screens in Los Angeles. And we're just burning through cash, right? All of these people needed to be on our payroll. We needed to keep these engineers employed. And software engineering as a profession normally gets paid a good amount of money, especially in California and near San Francisco, right? Everyone's expecting top dollar for their salary. And so this was really challenging for us. And then one day, right, this is the ugly side of startups, and not something that people normally talk about. One day, our CTO, my co-founder, left. And I don't mean he, quietly left and decided, hey, I think I'm going to start doing something else. Let's find a transition. Let's figure something out. He texted me on a Saturday morning and said, hey, I'm not coming back. And that was it. And he left. And, he was running this tech team, and eventually lots of, drama unfolded. Most of the engineers left. It was a bit of chaos, but we had these customers that were relying on us to provide a service. And, at that moment, as an entrepreneur, you want control over your destiny. You want to figure out a solution on how you can actually solve your own problem and keep this business afloat. And so that's when I found Bubble. I had actually been kind of interested in it and investigating and tinkering around, but now with a business and an idea that really needed to get built, I dove head in to Bubble about 3 years ago, pretty much full time, 40 plus hours a week, just building in Bubble, trying to figure out how can I take this functionality that we had built with our software engineering team and put it into Bubble. And it was surprising, but it was possible, right? most people have this idea that no code is not really code. It's kind of junky software. It doesn't really work very well. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be efficient. But it actually worked. And we were actually able to rebuild our entire platform into Bubble. And so we were able to save this business without taking out, loans or hiring dozens of new engineers. But doing this by myself, I was able to take back control of my business. And this is really a powerful opportunity because a lot of people face this same problem. Like Zubair said in the beginning, if you want to build an idea, you need to, if you don't know how to code yourself, you're probably going to try to recruit somebody. And that is a challenging task. And now with no code, you actually can control your own destiny of what it is you'd like to build. And not to knock software engineers, they're what makes no code possible as well. They're super important into building the next frontier of technology. But sometimes, as an entrepreneur, if you are not equipped, you have not taken the training to build software on your own, you'd like to build for yourself. And so now, 4 years later, Ads on Top is growing rapidly. We are a SaaS platform now. We've gone from building internal tools that we were using to tools that other network operators use. We deliver ads to tens of thousands of screens across the globe, in many countries, on many continents, using no code. And it's all because, this Bubble platform that you saw a quick demo of has just made it so simple to build for people who don't know software engineering, right? Like, I'm not a software engineer. I knew nothing about it, but I figured it out. And now the community in no code has become so strong that there are lots of tutorials, there are boot camps. I'm an instructor, Zubair is an instructor, to teach you. So you can get a leg up instead of just jumping in and trying to learn it on your own. What's really exciting about Bubble is that, I took this idea that we had been building and validating over years, and then rebuilt it. But there's plenty of room for quick and rapid prototyping. And so now that I've learned how to build in Bubble and I can build pretty quickly, I love just building new ideas. And so if you can click onto that next slide. One project, just to kind of explain the opportunity that Bubble provides. Me and one friend, we built and designed an app called Oz, like the Wizard of Oz, which was a financial management app for service workers, for bartenders, coffee shop workers, waitresses, and waiters, and a way for them to better predict their income all automatically. And within 2 weeks, we were able to build and design a full mobile application with two people who did not know how to code, that automatically pulled bank transactions using an integration with Plaid that in itself is usually a week's worth of work. But we were able to build and automate these transaction analytics, figure out what the average income looks like, what average expenses look like, auto-categorize these things, all using no code and all on a mobile device. So somebody asked in the chat, can you turn a Bubble app into a mobile app? The answer is yes. There are a couple ways you can do that. We used a progressive web app. So this will save on a mobile device like an app, but not through the App Store, just for speed. But the concept of speed is really important because of how fast you can iterate. And I think this will come up in a couple, in the other talks in a little bit. The speed at which you can iterate and test and validate ideas is astounding. So just to give you an example of why this is so important, and another thing you probably wouldn't be able to do on your own, just through normal coding means, while we were working on this project, we were doing lots of live user demos. We would sit in a coffee shop and invite someone to test the app, and we'd watch. And we'd say, hey, how would you use this? What do you think? What are your feedback? Just normal user research. And while I was sitting there, I noticed that the user was running into a bug. There was a bug that was sitting, and she couldn't progress through the rest of the application. And while I'm sitting there, while she thinks I'm taking notes, I'm actually fixing this bug in real time. And I was actually able to fix the bug while she was sitting there. And she could continue through the demo. This is normally a process that would take a long time to communicate to somebody, to fix, to push, to deploy, to reload through the application. And this was pretty much immediate. And it was just a really cool opportunity to deliver value quickly. The app, we don't use the app anymore, the project kind of fizzled out. But it was really fun experience to build this sort of application. For me, Bubble has changed my life. Obviously now I build software for a living. I run this software company that I can control through code, and I can teach and meet people from all over the world, right? I'm sitting in Los Angeles. Normally, I would not be able to meet people from all over. And so this has been a really cool experience. The community is great, and it's been a lot of fun kind of learning and building. And so that's been my journey from civil engineering to no-code software engineering. And I'm looking forward to hearing all of your success stories about what you guys build.
All right. Thank you very much, David, for talking about Ads on Top and Oz. Really impressive stuff, especially the coffee shop. And it's like, okay, there's user testing, and then there's static wireframe user testing, and then there's like, yeah, it works, I just fixed it user testing. So you just went to the next level with that.
The next level. That's right.
So what next? I think if somebody thinks of a bug and it's fixed, but I don't know if we'll get there. Maybe in our lifetimes. All right, thanks a lot. So now next speaker, Maysaleen Kasad. I believe she's in New York. She can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, she's the founder of Startup Without Code and the Women Who Side Hustle newsletter. She has previously attended the Flatiron School boot camp, which is a coding boot camp, I believe, and she's active in communities such as Indie Hackers and Indie Women. She has recently made an effort to help early stage entrepreneurs quickly build and validate their MVP without code by providing a resource and toolkit that it's I think it's a Notion template. Notion is amazing for those of you who are listening. It's really great. So over to Maysaleen to talk about how she built a newsletter directory, techie newsletters using not Bubble. We've been talking about Bubble too much. So it's like, okay, using Pori and Airtable and in a couple of hours. So.
Hello, hi, my name is Maysaleen. Yes, I currently reside in upstate New York. I just wanted to give you a rundown of why I decided to go with no code for my projects from a developer background. And then I'll do a short demo of Pori and how it works. If you can just go to the next slide. Yeah. So I decided to build a newsletter, a directory using Pori and Airtable in a couple of hours. So coming from a background of being a developer, it wasn't too hard just getting into it, building and putting it out there. Why did I decide to use no-code tools as a developer? Well, it's a faster way to validate your idea. So you don't want to spend, so if you have an idea, you don't want to spend 6 months to a year trying to build it out and then trying to validate. By then, I mean, your idea might be either, it might be too old, nobody wants to use it, you don't know who wants to use it. So you don't want to spend too much time building. You want to just put out an MVP as quickly as possible. As developers, we usually also create bugs in our products. So especially for an MVP, when you're trying to code out specific features, you try to focus on certain compartments of your application, and you start to not focus on the other parts, and in turn, sometimes it causes bugs, and you really don't want that. So using a no-code tool prevents that from happening. They're usually also budget friendly, so you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on developers to create an application to just in order to validate it. You also don't want to feel guilty if it doesn't work out. So for example, as a developer, if you've spent months and months and months coding this project and you're thinking it's going to work, I hear this many times, and then you put it out there and nobody cares. There's crickets. Nobody wants to use your product. Nobody cares. And that's because you took too long to create it. And then you start feeling guilty about, oh, I spent all this time to create this amazing product and nobody wants to use it. So that's not that great, is it? Can you just go to the next slide? Okay. So what tools did I use to build the newsletter directory? I used Pori.io and Airtable. Pori focuses on directory style web apps. So that's something that's interesting with no-code tools. Each no-code tool is created for specific purposes, with the exception of Bubble. I think that's a really interesting app that I think you can pretty much make almost anything with Bubble. But other no-code tools usually are a little bit more specific to certain markets. So Pori focuses on market, like a market style or directory style web app. And you can integrate that with Airtable as a database. So any data that you need to input, for example, if you have a list of books and you want it displayed on the front end, you can input those books on Airtable and then it'll display onto Pori. So the user gets to see the front end, which is Pori.io. Each platform is a tool that has its pros and cons as well, and its use case. So like I said earlier, each no-code tool is used for specific purposes usually. Like Adalo is mobile applications. You have, let's see, you have Google Sheets, which is backend. So there's a bunch out there that are really interesting and has a specific use case. Choose the tool that's best for the job. So you don't want to get hooked, or like, you don't want to be too attached to one single tool. If you have a product that you want to build, figure out what the type of problems that you want to solve and try to find the tool that best fits your use case. So would I be able to share my screen here?
You should be. I'll stop. And
Okay.
if not, Zahid should be able to make you a co-host, and then you should be.
Okay.
Yep, it's working.
Do you guys see the Pori screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I wanted to show you how this works. So for Pori.io, this would be your entrance page. And all you would have to do, it's so easy to use. You just click create site, pick a template. So for example, I can pick this template right here. Let me just move this, sorry. Okay, there we are. You create a name, a site name. We could do ebook, marketplace, create site. And it gives you this right here, which is so awesome. So they fill it up with their own stuff, and you can customize it the way you want. So for example, as you can see over here, you can edit the header. You can input your logo here, adjust the height and how big it is. You can choose your style for the text color, the hover color. So a lot of cool customizations here. You can edit your section. So this section right here, you can input content, choose your text, choose the fonts, the size, the buttons, the integrations even, the background colors. You can also integrate Google Analytics. You can add a live chat. And the best part is you can add your own code. So this would be considered low code. So for example, as you expand, it would be great to add features to it so that you don't get stuck, because as businesses grow, they need a little bit more customization. So this is great for that. And right here, you would set up your Airtable. So for time's sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and show you the Airtable for my techie letters right here. Here, let me show you something. Here's my techie letters website. So I have an upvoting ability here, and when you click on it, you can subscribe to each newsletter, and it has a little description. And then when you go to Airtable, here, hold on. Whoops. I want to show you how the data looks on the back end. It's really cool. Airtable is very amazing. So here would be the titles of each newsletter. And then you would have the description, the URL, and then the filters that you would use. And then there's some more things over here. I don't want to show because there's some emails here, so I don't want to expose their emails. But yeah, this is really interesting. And I think it's very strong in its capabilities. Let's see. And then it has a filtering capability. So for example, if you want to see only tech news, you would click this, and anything that's filtered with, that has the tech news tags, it would show up over here, which is super cool. So there's a lot of capabilities with Pori and Airtable. This is a directory. You can also create a marketplace and add like Stripe. You can integrate other payment plans or payment applications, which I think is awesome. So I think down the line, it would be great for me to create a marketplace, and maybe I can do like a little tutorial on that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had here.
All right. Thank you very much, Maysoline. So it's like, if you give a rough time estimate, how, when you started, like, okay, you had the journey, the idea, and it's like, did you mull over it for a while? Did you know about Pori already? Or was that the first time you were using Pori? I think Airtable, was that the first time you were using Airtable?
Yeah, it was actually my first time using both of them. I saw some newsletter directories online, and I thought it was really cool. And I was like, oh, I wanted to create a newsletter directory that only focused on tech newsletters, because I've seen a whole, schmarts of, like a whole thing of different newsletters. And I was like, it would be cool, since I'm in tech, I would focus on tech newsletters. And I've heard of Pori and on Indie Hackers. And so I decided to go with Pori. And of course, there's a sheet to sheet. That's another one as well. But in the end, I decided to go with Pori, see how it went. And it was very easy. I quickly put together the directory within a couple of hours. And the next day I tweeted about it, and a lot of people seemed interested, and they're like, oh, that's so cool, So yeah, it was fun. And it was very straightforward. I think Zubair, he asked me, if you didn't have a developer background, would it be easy to use? And I think it would be, yeah. It is very straightforward. It's not too complicated. There's not a huge learning curve. I think people with no coding background can easily build something great with it.
Excellent. So thank you very much. And so now for our next speaker, Munir Muhammad. Munir, do you want to share your own screen, or do you want me to be the co-pilot?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I don't mind. I'll try and see if I can control my own screen, because there's a few things that I'd like to show you while we're at it. Share screen. Okay.
So while Munir is setting it up, I'll start with the bio, because you don't want to miss the bio. So Munir is the CTO of National Zakat Foundation, who've been going on for 10 years. He has over 25 years experience in designing and delivering business projects in the commercial and not-for-profit space. Now, charities may be looked at with a certain angle that they're a bit dated. So NZF are at the front of the pack with no code and low code, and they're talking about it as well. So I'm really excited to see what Munir has to talk about. Over to you.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I got the graveyard shift, so hopefully I can keep you awake for a few minutes. Okay, so my presentation is a little bit different. I'm not here to sell bubble, but my previous two esteemed colleagues have already given it a wonderful sort of like introduction and presentation. And if everyone else is to be believed, I think the bubble is so brilliant. It's an answer to everything. But I'll let you be the judge of that after the next few screens. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. National Zakat Foundation. I'm going to go through these screens and it'll feel like I'm reading them, but I'll try not to, and I'll try and stay as engaging as I can. But National Zakat Foundation is basically an organization that has one purpose: to act as a platform between payers of a religious obligation. Right, it's a pillar of Islam, a religious obligation being a tax. It's called zakat. It's 2.5% on your excess wealth that you have, taking that from people who have excess wealth and then redistributing it to people who are in need. Okay, worthy. I said worthy is probably the wrong sort of like word to use, but eligible recipients of zakat in the United Kingdom. We started this about 10 years ago, and since then, obviously, we've expanded, become part of a much bigger organization called NZF Worldwide, which is a global program, and it runs in a number of countries, Australia, Canada, etc. And we handle millions and millions a year. Alhamdulillah. And to be honest, we being the oldest, in our sort of like global outreach, have had the amazing opportunity to learn from payers and learn from recipients, because that's who we serve. We're not just here to be like a tech startup and think fancy ideas. We came out to solve a problem. That problem was getting that money to people who need it most. And in that process, a number of people joined us, very clever, very intelligent people, mashallah. God bless them. They've imparted some knowledge to us, and we've taken that knowledge and seen how we could behave like a startup, react like a startup. And reacting like a startup, what does it mean? It means to solve problems very quickly. And that constant that we keep having bashed at us is change. Literally every day, something is changing. How do you keep up with that? It's ridiculous. Imagine being a software engineer. It is an incredible challenge to keep up with. So what was our business problems? Well, our main business problem, the one that we solved, and I would like to talk to you about, is that on the other side of sort of like handing out money as opposed to receiving money. On that side of it, initially when we started out, it wasn't really a problem. 2, 3, 10 applications, sometimes a day, a week, and they can be handled quite easily. They came written down on paper. And here's typically the application form that somebody would actually go through. Hopefully you can see this. It was quite a long application. There were declarations within it, and people would take this manually, fill it out and put it in the post to us. So you can see there's a lot of fields in there, about 300 or so. But one might ask, why do you need so much information? Because we are duty bound to the people who've entrusted us with money to say that we will make sure it goes to eligible recipients, not just anybody who claims they're Muslim, who claims they're in hardship. We'll need them to prove it as far as they can, and we'll try and help them access that money and support that they need to change their lives. So there's a lot of questions that needed answering here, and these would come in, and obviously we have dedicated grants officers that would go through and make sure that they haven't got bank account that's got lots of money and things like that. So it's quite a complicated process, but we're not going to deal with that. So these application forms, great for small scale, but then what happens when all of a sudden it scales up and you've got order of magnitude coming in? Well, typically what you would do is create yourself an Excel spreadsheet like we did, and started putting in Excel spreadsheets and started sharing them. But those became slowly unmanageable, because I don't know if you've experienced that with Google Sheets and shared resources. Often the question is not, can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's question, who changed that? Oh my God, can you roll back? Edits, fields overwritten, things like that. And that's great for, let's say 5, 10 people sharing. But when you have like 30, 40, 50 people sharing, the problem's magnitude and they grow. Okay. And forms as well, online forms, they gave us limitations of, the type of form fields we could have, the type of technologies they would support. It just, every time we picked up a technology and tried to use it, it just gave us limitations. And the only thing we could do was compromise. And we didn't want to compromise, but we certainly didn't want to be left feeling in the dark, so to speak. So we looked at an application or a form type engine that would give us absolute control over everything. But we didn't have money. We didn't have the right amount of money, which an organization should need to develop something as advanced, say, sort of like in the 6 figures or 7 figures, because that's the sort of things that you get quoted for applications. So we looked at a kind of like a platform called Bubble and said, could we take this and our business logic and all the intelligence that we have, required to do that, put it into this kind of like automated system. So I'm just going to show you our website here, which is launching for Ramadan 21. All of the services that you see here are not on Bubble, surprise. Right? These services are all here, they're on WordPress, because WordPress, as earlier on our host mentioned, it's almost a de facto standard. It's very good with SEO and certain things. So you have to choose your tools very carefully. So we mix these up, and when somebody comes online, they do one of 3 things. They either come and give their donation to us, calculate, or apply for a grant and help. When they click on apply for a grant and help, they're actually given this form to fill in. And here's the actual form. I'm going to go through the first few screens. You'll see how much we've been able to do with Bubble. First of all, customization on screen. The world's your oyster, pretty much. It is like drag and drop. Wherever you put a button, it stays there. So when somebody sees it on the device, fantastic. I no longer have to worry about that. I can change colors myself, and I'm not a developer, but also all the key stakeholders in my organization. So people who are in finance, they can actually input into this as well. They can change them, they can view things, and collectively as a group. And once an organization understands and they buy into the whole product, you find it's a lot easier to maintain, run, manage, and also to perfect in the long term. So click on I understand, we go forward, very simple. And it's quick, it's quite rapid. I would say it's not on par with some of the other development environments that you might get, like Laravel, for example, or React.js, which are typically half-second, quarter of a second response times. But if that's what you're looking for, then that's where you need to go. But here it's fast enough for regular applications. And the fact it's responsive, it can be used anywhere. So I'm completing a new application. You come into here, we give them very simple UI so they can pick what type of ID that they've got and they want to present to us, pick their legal status, and then simply upload a document. Now, one of the great things we've done recently, and we didn't realize even this was possible, was that we could take someone's ID, feed it through an AI engine, look at the document ID and see if it was actually a valid ID or not. And this would feed back into Bubble and let us know, so we could save that in the database. Absolutely fantastic. A company in Italy produced the actual little plugin for us. It literally cost peanuts, and the time to delivery was under a week. So we were very impressed, and it reduced our error rate from around about 800 errors a week down to about 15 weeks. So it was very impressive in that side. That's the end of that demonstration. I can always show you more screens later on, but it is quite advanced. Everything from applying all the way through to management interface. We have a management interface where our grants officers manage these sort of like applications coming in, all the way to making a grant as well. That's the quickish introduction. I had a lot of other things to say about this, but one thing I will say is that software code is stuff for a lot of black magic. It's a secret art. Everyone you go to, will give you their version of what is the best. For example, Bootstrap, JS, Laravel, PHP. And as a person trying to solve a business problem, I always find that very difficult. What is the right tool to actually use? Because if I choose a particular tool or a type of way of doing something, I'm pretty much tied to that organization or that individual for a very long time, because the product's going to be with me for a while, right? 3 years, 5 years, whatever the lifespan of it is. So we've been very careful about the tools that we choose going forward. We want something that empowers us as the owners of the ideas, the owners of the actual business logic, to be able to not just change things, modify things, but more importantly, understand how they work so we can help improve our own products. I would go as far as saying no code retires these wizards. You don't need them, I'm sorry. It's just not worth it. And we, if somebody said to you, look, you could do the same thing in PowerPoint, believe me, as a product sort of like owner, I would develop it in PowerPoint, because I'm after the solution. I'm not necessarily after trying to reinvent the wheel. No, that's not what I'm about. Once my product is perfected, I may well in parallel develop it in a very fast engine or, you know, native code or something like that. But that's much further down. I need proof of concept that something I'm going to do is going to work. It's going to do it well. And it's going to be tested by many people who can collaborate on that. And that kind of empowers us as an organization, it empowers me as a product manager to be able to go in there. And I focus on what's the most important thing. And that is business logic, purpose, and what my goal is. What's my goal? That's what I'm here for. That's what that product's going to do. So if you focus on that, and less of the code, I think you end up achieving your dreams much quicker. David touched on it earlier on, and he says, you know, he was left stranded when, you know, his developers kind of like left him high and dry. And I feel for him. I do understand where he comes from, because I've been in that sort of like place before with agencies as well as individuals. And you're really stuck because the next developer you go to you have to pay him almost double to unpick how they did something, and then you start again and you think, how long is he going to be there for? Or you hire somebody in and you think, right, somebody else is going to come and make him a job offer, £2,000 more, whatever it is, and off they go again. So it's a vicious cycle. Empowering yourself is what it's all about. What that gives you the power to do with Bubble in particular and these low-code platforms is you focus on things like, as I said earlier on, goals, but UX, UAT, UI. It doesn't retire you. It gives you that skill set that you can use somewhere else that makes your product or makes what you're trying to achieve much faster. So we then took our skill set and tools like Figma, for example, Adobe XD and things like that, and started perfecting our life cycle of our product, what was really important to us, and not focus on that. The irony was, once we actually did this high level stuff where we're modeling and prototyping them more, even the code guys or the people who are putting together the actual Bubble systems were doing it a lot faster, because they saw what we're trying to do and how we're doing and how it's connected. The visualization was there, the logic was there, and the goal, you could actually show them what the goal is. Now, you might not be able to do this all yourself because there's quite a lot involved in that, and I've spoken about a lot. But if you saw something on screen, literally like a block of Lego, and said, well, if this happens and and the light bulb turns on, you don't need code for that. You're actually, yes, you're coding, but you're actually making your product as you go along. You can make it fine and give the finesse, etc., much later on. And I call that tweaking, adjusting, and all that. But the important thing is you can get collaborative effort after that. So you may then hire in somebody who's very good at UI and say, look, I have a Bubble app. I've done really, it works, but I now need to make it look really nice. They will be able to do that for you without breaking something. And then, you know, there are plenty of agencies out there, because that's what we discovered, you know, that would be able to help us do that. Excuse me. So you can build better services, right? And they can be incredibly intricate, i.e. we just shared with you the fact that we actually do use artificial intelligence to check people's documents and IDs, look at their bank statements, extract information from there. We go as far as doing banking checks. So before we pay any of these eligible recipients, we want to make sure that, you know, there's no fraud going on. So we do several checks. But a lot of things our grants office is doing that. We've allowed Bubble to do the logic behind it. So the business logic has gone into that to increase, or at least capacity. So we've kind of like allowed systems to be able to do that for us, as opposed to just human beings doing it all the time. But we're on a learning curve. I'm not saying we've actually kind of like hit the nail on the head on that one. It's still time to go, but certainly we've made a huge amount of, you know, sort of like gains in that area. And certainly we've opened up, we found new talent agencies that can help us. And I feel that sharing this story with you should be able to give you a view that if you can get out of that little chasm of like black magic and black art of just being code, do you really want to spend 80% of your time looking at ones and zeros, noughts and crosses? It's like the Matrix, right? If you do, that's great, but you know, you're probably not in solving societal problems or in solving business problems, etc. It's more of a back office task. But you know, and that seems to be where a lot of people in this low code, you know, environment want to be. They want to solve problems. They want to get products out there, and that's really, really important. So hopefully this will give you the ability to be able to, you know, self-manage, self-control, and not be controlled, so to speak. So you can actually deliver a solution quickly and scale it yourself. I hope that wasn't too much. Jazakallah khair for your patience, because this is the very first presentation I have ever done. And there you go.
Thank you so much. It's really insightful. Like knowing that NZF is using AI and no code to make sure that charity from givers is most efficiently transferred over to genuine recipients. It's amazing. And I guess, can you give a few remarks on like efficiency? Was that the objective, or was ownership also the objective? You could have hired a team of software engineers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. We could have done, and we still are. We have agencies on board that do a lot of work for us. I think really at first it was more about, could we really get control of our destiny? Because we know what we want to do. We know business logic. We understand, the problems that we need to solve. Because really, look, app developers are solving problems, right? And the example that I would give to people, especially, so like something I did in a private little chat a little while ago, was the example of eBay and Amazon. If you look at their UI and what they do, they haven't changed at all over the last 5 years. They've got very minor tweaks. So what is it? It's not the software. It's not how fancy it looks or how fast. It's actually the solution, the problem they solved. And that solution, the problem, doesn't need iterative change. It doesn't need any new UX or UI. It works. So, but you need to solve a problem. You need to like bring a product to market. We know, I feel passionate, and I'm sure a lot of you there are passionate. You know the product that you want. Get something that gives you that product very quickly, because you'll be pleased you have something in your hands, like we were as soon as we picked it up. We didn't realize it would set us on a trajectory where we would actually have a lot more control. We'd understand what that control was. We'd become more responsible, asking developers of what we want them to do. Because if we could show them, and this was literally like a prototyping tool to a large degree, you put your buttons on, you show them screens, and they would see it. And they found that so easy to work with, because it's very hard describing people the 5 pillars of Islam. It's very hard to tell them the difference between 8 categories of zakat. I'm sure if I asked this wonderful group cohort what those categories of zakat were, they'd be like, oh gosh, who do you help? Exactly. So it's hard enough explaining that. So when you then have to explain your business logic and what you're trying to do to a coding environment, developer like a Laravel developer, it's incredibly difficult. So if we took the coding away and just kept it in a more modular block fashion, and by no means does it make it simpler, as you saw with the demo that I showed. The world's your oyster. It's about getting your UI right. It's about the experience that you want your applicant or the person using your service to have. If you get that right, it's successful on any code platform. But in order to have a low cost and low kind of like time to delivery, there isn't anything better that I've come across.
Excellent. All right. So one last piece of information before we switch towards Q&A. Ivy League universities and their programs for School of Entrepreneurship or like intensive masters or other programs can be a good litmus test as well as like, okay, what's cutting edge? And this is a program by Yale. It's like intensive and introduction to no code, build software without being a developer. So there are just a few markers that I was like, okay, what's going on in the world? Some stuff happens early and there are markers and like, okay, the academia world has started to pick it up as well now. It's not just the commercial world. So academia, sometimes charities are like sometimes known to be lagging. Okay, charities have started picking it up. Academia is like looked at, oh, they're way behind industry. Well, they've started to pick it up as well. Commercial sectors, of course, they want to like innovate and start as well. So with that, let's switch to question and answers. And I believe, Zahid, I need to stop talking.
We can't ask you to stop talking. We're all here to learn from you today. Thank you. And thank you to all the speakers that took the time out of their day today to share their experience and their insight. If you go through the chat, you'll see that there's a lot of positive feedback towards the projects you're working on, the pictures that you gave. So thank you again. A lot of positive feedback. We've got a lot of questions to go through, and I think the best way to do this to make sure that we stay on time is to try and do them as quick fire as possible. So I'll go through the list of questions we have from the top to bottom with the most popular ones first. So people go ahead and give a thumbs up to the questions that you want answered. and we'll give all the speakers that presented today an opportunity to give their opinion and their thoughts. If a speaker isn't comfortable answering a question, feel free to pass over. Some of them are more technical than others. So we'll kick off with the first question, and that is there a no-code platform that supports video content viewing? Zubair, do you want to go ahead and try and tackle that one first?
The way video works is that you host it elsewhere, and then you just have the video player fetch video from that place. So you could put it on YouTube, and then all you need to do is just add a video element and point to the right link from like, okay, just display that video. You can make it more complicated by using another service like Zigio, which is an API video as a service. And of course, I'm going to start talking about Bubble. There's a Bubble plugin for Zigio, and you can just, you can use it. So it's easy.
Cool, thank you. Any of the other speakers want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to mention that the great thing with Pori is that you can embed Pori onto WordPress, which is interesting. So you can, just like Zubair mentioned, you can host it from like YouTube and then have it playing on your WordPress site. And you can embed these type of platforms onto your WordPress site if you want it to have a certain look. So yeah.
Great, thank you. As the one that has some experience in building some projects using no code, I'll switch the next question over to you first, Maiselin. Is it possible to recreate a social media website like LinkedIn, Facebook using Bubble? So I think the question is really around how complex can you go with no code tools? Any insight?
I haven't used Bubble, but from what I know, this is like a running joke on social media. Can I do this with Bubble? The answer is always yes. So Bubble is it's a really strong platform with a lot of capabilities. So I do think that it is possible, especially with the plugins and customization and things like that. So I think it's possible.
Okay, Zubair, I'm sure you have something to say about Bubble here.
Just Google how to build LinkedIn with Bubble and you'll see a nice long blog post about it. In fact, insert any platform, how to build Facebook via Bubble using Bubble, how to build Twitter using Bubble, how to build Wikipedia using Bubble. And you'll see a nice long blog post about it and some templates as well. So yes, you can.
Okay, great. David, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I guess, there have been lots of things that I've wanted to build, that I've tried to build. The building with no code is a little addicting in that you can kind of build anything. So at some point you ask, is it worth building or should I just use what exists? And I know we're talking about no code, but there's plenty of build versus buy mentality. And, I find a lot of people that I end up coaching, they have a great idea, which is LinkedIn plus something slightly different. And so don't build just to build someone else's feature, right? Like they just need to add it, not you don't need to rebuild their whole thing. Yeah, but yes, you can if you want to.
Very good. So if you're feeling inspired to go ahead and build the next LinkedIn and raise billions of pounds, we've teamed up with Bubble to actually get you some discount codes. So there's details in the chats about how you can get 50% off your Bubble membership. Of course, we're not saying you have to use Bubble, but if you want to give it a go, please go ahead. Zubair has also kindly put in some links to blog posts that actually guide you through the process. I can see building with LinkedIn, building with Facebook, building LinkedIn, building Facebook. So if you're feeling inspired, have a look in the chat, get your code, and have a go. And if you do manage to build something, post about it on the Slack channel. Maybe we'll have you up at the next event to share your journey with us. Okay, so next question, and this is one that might affect National Zakat Foundation a little bit as well, especially from a technical perspective and maintenance. Is it possible to take your website or app off the Bubble platform, or once you're on, are you sort of tied in? So Munir, would you like to have a go at maybe giving some insight on the decision-making process that you had there? Because I'm sure it's something that came across your mind.
Absolutely. I'm one of the senior team at NZF, and it's not a question that doesn't go unasked, shall we say, on a regular basis, which is, can we move and are we actually tied in? The truth of the answer is, yes, you're tied in. And the truth of the answer is you're tied into no matter what choice you make. So if you go with a Laravel type of, sort of like a platform and idea, that organization, that company, that framework that you've used, you're tied into that. If you choose to go to, Oracle, for example, for your, backend database, or Salesforce or something, yeah, you're tied into them. The important thing is, I think we have to distinguish between the platform and the data. First of all, make sure you design your system in such a way that your data is exportable. The value is in your data, not necessarily how the blocks are laid out, because you can replicate that fairly rapidly. Because once you know your application very well, it's just not a conversation you need to have. The data is a really important thing. Get that out in Excel, CSV, whatever format it is, and then someone should be able to re-engineer and copy that if that is the major problem. But in terms of scalability, like I say, we're doing 6,500, 7,000 applications a month for Zakat. And scalability hasn't even broken a sweat. It's like it's hovering at around about 5-10%, in terms of capacity demand. And it's like it's on Amazon AWS. So in terms of scaling, sorry, I'm talking techie here, but I'm sure I'll be forgiven by a few. You literally buy extra capacity that you need. So if I need, like 60 CPU power, horsepower, it's there. And the good thing is, you scale it for a few hours or even a few days, and then you pay for that and then bring it back down again. If you like during the Ramadan period, that's our heaviest, as you would understand. If you're a Muslim, you know that during Ramadan, it's going to be the busiest period of doing zakat. It's like 200-fold, 300-fold increase. So we scale and pay for that at that time. And then the rest of the year, we bring it down to a package, which is really affordable. So moving away, make sure the data is designed really well. That's where the value is.
Cool, great answer. Maysaleen, you showed us a database or some sort of table in one of your demos earlier today. How has the process been for you to build the app with the data backing behind it? And is that a consideration you've taken when you were building, your project? Were you thinking about how will I split this out? And do you have any concerns about one day wanting to move back to trusty old WordPress?
Yeah, so I love Airtable. It makes things so much easier. I have built a database before from scratch, and it's not the easiest thing to do, especially coding it. Like I said earlier, sometimes you run into bugs and stuff, and that's something I didn't want to deal with. I just wanted to put out an MVP so people can use right away. Airtable does have Zapier integrations. So if there's anything custom that you wanted, or you wanted to integrate with a different platform, you do have the capability to do that. I'm not at the level yet to think about that right now, but I do think about it often. If I felt like these platforms weren't enough, what would I do? And WordPress, it's an option for sure. Or coding things from scratch and using templates is another option. So yeah.
Cool, thank you. We have some sensible people asking about security, or maybe they're just hackers looking for their next victim. Someone has asked, are no-code apps more vulnerable to security threats? And as these apps are often built by non-technical users, and someone's also asking, what is the security like in Bubble? So David, do you want to have a crack at that question?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this is that most people, when they build with no code, they assume, oh, it's just one person sitting in a room building their own app. But in reality, you basically just outsource to Bubble's dev team I guess there are 35 people now, the 35 developers on Bubble's platform day in and day out to make sure that all of these issues are not your concern, and instead it's theirs. And so, yeah, all of these things are as secure as it can be. There are some best practices on how to do everything you can on your side to make sure that nothing really happens. But Bubble is taking proactive measures to be prepared for whatever might be heading their way. I know they dealt with a DDoS attack, and they do this all the time, and they do their own testing and security testing. And they have strict controls over password protection and how that gets handled. And so there's a lot that happens in that way. And so I'd say it's fairly secure. Look, if someone wants to hack your website, they're probably going to get it, right? Like there's very little they can do. Anyone can do, really. If they have enough willpower, they'll get it.
Thank you for the insight. Zubair, a question for you. How could we convert an app made on Bubble into an app that can be published on the App Store? Do you have a high-level answer to that?
So the first answer to that would be to look at Adalo, another platform which is up and coming in this space. They want to specifically focus on pushing apps into App Store. And it's not as feature rich in some aspects, but it's growing very rapidly. And now it's focusing specifically on Bubble. Yes, you can design a mobile responsive web application, and then there are services with which you can package it up. You could, if you're a developer, you could package it up yourself, because technically it's just a URL with a web view wrapper. But there are external services that basically will do that for you, and then you can push to App Store. There are multiple questions. This gets asked often, and sometimes for MVP audience, I'd say, do you need the app on the App Store? So you could start with the mobile responsive version as well. But yeah.
Cool, great, thank you. I hope that answers the question for whoever asked that. The next question we have is, there are a number of applications delivering the same experience with extensive functionality which are free, such as Microsoft Power Apps. Why pay for Bubble when you can use this service for free? Munir, can I pass this question over to you? It must have been another decision that you had to make at some point.
Yes, we do actually use, or started to use Power Apps, and you're absolutely right. There are those that Google has something very similar as well, and Amazon, as Zubair kindly pointed out earlier on, they have a suite of products that do something very similar. To be honest, what they've done with their products, they've bolted them on top of the environment that they already have. And that environment has its own limitations. So they didn't really start off from a point of like looking at, what a developer wants. Their product and service is more around giving it to people within businesses, so they can use functional blocks to solve problems in it. And the main thing is solving functional block-based problems within organizations, as opposed to UIs. There's a separate suite of applications, don't get me wrong, like Visual Studio and things like that for the real, sort of hardcore developers. But certainly in that kind of like a drag and drop, quick production ready type of environments. And then the other thing was, a lot of the things that they did actually push out with them had dependencies that tied them back to Microsoft products and services, and that made it kind of troublesome if you wanted to go to every platform and any user as well. So the best example I can give you, a very simple one, is something like Microsoft Teams. It's, if you can send somebody a link, but guess what? They've got to download the app. They've got to go through. It's like jumping through hoops. So some of these apps you've literally got to jump through hoops. So the UX, the experience of the user, it's not natural. But if you got a Teams link, Google Teams link, you click it once, it opens up, and boom, there you go. You're in a session. That's what you're looking for, to try and make it easy. Those apps don't necessarily give you that low-level control, whereas Bubble is able to give you almost that very kind of like fine-grained control, so you can control the UX experience rather than have it too blocky and too based like that. That's been our experience with it.
Okay, cool. So it's about barriers to exit and how Bubble doesn't tie you into the entire Bubble ecosystem, at least for now. I think it really ties back to what you said earlier about just making sure your data layer is separate, and that's where the core of your data is. The application's a little bit different. Thank you for the answer. We have a question around the performance and speed for Bubble sites. Do we have any speakers that want to contribute to the performance of a Bubble website once it's been published?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Performance is one of the things that Bubble gets knocked on most often on their forums, even though most of the time it's a problem that lies somewhere between the keyboard and the chair, which is usually for the person who's building it, right? That's what that means. Bubble itself is not limiting in any way, but it's usually the design of the app that becomes a problem, whether it's database design, which, you know, as much as it is point and click, as you get more complexity in your data structure, the more you need to do in the browser to pull out the right data, it becomes slower, and, you know, performance takes a little bit of a hit. That being said, you know, I've had a lot of success building applications that have hundreds of thousands of rows of data that need to be analyzed and combined. The key is just making sure that you build the database with that final UI in mind, so that you don't have to do things in a browser. Right? It's usually not actually Bubble's limitation. It's a design.
Thank you. There's another type of performance that some people building websites experience, and that's how it performs in search engines and SEO. Maysaleen, since you've built a directory website, SEO must have been something that you might have considered. Can you give any insight on how no-code apps perform when targeting SEO?
So for Pori, so for a lot of these SEO, when you want to focus on SEO, you have to take into consideration keywords. And with Pori, that's something they're currently working on with the blog. So they don't have a blog right now, or a blog capability. So I'm waiting for them to have that so that I'm able to rank for keywords. So for now, I usually just put it out onto social media. And Pori is quite new. So, you know, I'm going to have to wait until these features are created. Or I could embed it into WordPress. That's another option for me to rank for keywords. But yeah.
Great, thank you. And Zubair, you build no-code applications for clients. SEO must be a request that you get sometimes. How do you deal with that with your no-code?
What I'd say is it's an improving situation. So in the MVP land, SEO takes time anyways. It won't, you can't just like, oh, it's live with the best, what's the latest one? I think it's called Next.js or something. And it's like, okay, built it with the best framework, and Google's not gonna magically like you. It's gonna take its time. So in the early MVP land, you're not concerned about it as much. Recently, Bubble have announced some features to improve the situation. So now I'm not sure if it's an issue. David, is it an issue anymore with the slugs?
No, I think that's been fixed a little bit.
Yeah, it's a solved problem.
Cool, great. I like what you said there. It's an improving situation. Next time my manager asks me how I'm doing with my yearly targets, I can say it's an improving situation. I like it. We have some questions about which no-code platform people could try if they're there for the first time, if they're trying to use something for the first time, especially if they have a generous free tier or something that lets them get started without having to give their credit card details. I just want to go through all of the speakers, and if you can just give a short answer on what you'd recommend as the platform to start off with as an individual, not an organization that just wants to get your feet wet with no code. Munir, you're first on my screen, so I'll go with you first. Do you have any suggestions?
I mean, for a no-code platform, as I said, I played around with quite a few before I settled on Bubble, purely because to start off with, it's free, right? It doesn't take anything. You don't need a checkbook. You can try it out pretty much all of the features, apart from some advanced ones, but certainly to get your product MVP, you could do it on shoestring budget. And one of my friends, I remember, he said that it cost him £1.50. And I said, what was that cost, £1.50, when it's free? He said, the electricity my computer consumed.
Great. Love it. Zubair, what would be your recommendation?
Everybody knows my recommendation.
No, we don't. Yeah. You haven't been speaking about it for a whole hour.
Depends on the application and depends on the person and their background would be my answer. If you are a designer and you're comfortable with XD and Figma, and you're thinking, what are websites? You may want to look at Webflow, which could be an easier path to take one step because that's design heavy. So, and if your application is kind of data heavy, Airtable is the example. If your application is kind of logic heavy, just like maybe Zapier, it's a platform, but it depends. It's, where do if you're a data scientist with a Python background, there are Python low-code platforms for it. So it depends. And if you want a generic answer, Bubble. There's too much resource out there now, and it's one of the leading ones. So just Google tutorial. In fact, if I made one in Urdu as well. So there's one small 10-minute tutorial in the Urdu language on Bubble as well. So I'm not so sure about other no-code platforms if they have it in other languages as well. But yeah, Spanish, Portuguese. But yeah, I guess I should stop talking about Bubble now.
Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes, so please don't stop just yet. Maiselina, are we going to balance the books again and say maybe Pori on this? What would be your recommendation for someone just getting started?
I'm actually going to go in a different direction. So with an MVP, it'd be good to first validate your idea before even building it. So I would recommend, this is what I did with Startup Without Code. I created a Gumroad page, created some copywriting descriptions for the product, and I put it out there to see how many pre-orders I would get before even starting to build anything. And that's how I validated my idea. And then I went ahead and I created it with Notion, and I used card.co. I'm going to put
I think she said she's going to put the link in the description.
An
but
accidental mute, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Cool.
Oh.
Wicked. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know where I got muted, but yeah.
Did you have anything else to add?
No. So Gumroad and Card, I think, would be the way to go for MVP.
Cool. Excellent. And David, where should people start if they want to get their feet wet with no code?
I like Airtable as a starting place. Airtable is great because you can build data, right? Because you have a spreadsheet view, but you can also build some kind of simple applications and card views and list views and search and forms. And it kind of gives you a flavor for the idea of how you get something to change data, to save data, to export data, all of that stuff. And so I think that's a great place. And then you can easily export that stuff into Bubble when you're ready to step up into the no-code land.
Cool, great. We're pushing up against time. We still have a few questions left to answer. What we'll do then is we'll encourage everyone that still wants their question to be answered to jump on Slack and ask their questions in the general channel or in one of the coding or no code channels. And we'll get the speakers involved to jump on there and give you some answers as well. It looks like we've had a lot of demand and a lot of positive response for tonight's event. We're actually looking at launching some workshops so that people from the community can get some hands-on work with using no-code platforms. We'll hopefully have some of the experts that we have on the speakers panel today to speak about them. If that's something you'd like to see, please drop a yes, 3 capital letters as well, please, not just small case. Very good. People are on it already. If you'd like to see that, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll get something organized and on the books. We also, Zubair's hiding because he doesn't want to be leading that, but we'll hold him to it. We're also going to be holding a secret event shortly in the next month or so. If you've been part of Muslamic Makers for the last 5 years, you'll know that we actually turn 5 very, very soon. And we'll be celebrating that in a strange way, since we might still be half in lockdown, half not in lockdown. So keep an eye on our social media channels for that. If you're not already involved in our Slack channel, be sure to check that out. If you need details, head over to MuslamicMakers.com, click on join us on Slack or join our Slack, and that'll give you the details you need. Just a reminder, this event was in collaboration with Dean Developers. Do check them out at deandevelopers.com. Another massive shout out to their team, as well as the Muslamic Makers team, who worked tirelessly in the background to get this event up and running. A big shout out to Bubble for sponsoring the event and giving us some discount codes. Check the chat as well as our Slack channel for details on how you can redeem your code. And last but not least, a massive shout out to our speakers today. Thank you for giving us your time to speak to us and share your insight. It's been very valuable. If the speakers have any last words that they'd like to leave the event on, please unmute yourself and speak to your heart's content. Thank you everyone for joining us today.